Great. So thank you so much. I will take the next maybe half an hour to 40 minutes or so to give you my perspective of faith in the immune response and faith and health. And then I look forward to question and answers and discussion on this topic. Thank you again for inviting me. So I have divided the talk into 4 separate topics. So the one which leads to the other. I intended first to draw an inverted triangle to all of these 4 topics with the concepts that when I talk about the immune system and what I will talk about the basics of the immune system is what I know the most about in these 4 topics. Then I will transition from the immune system to the neuroimmune system, the junction between immunology and neuroscience. Then the third segment, which is neuropsychoimmune system and how psychology, immunology, and faith sort of interact with each other. And then finally, faith, spirituality, the immune system, where I look forward to much more discussion to explore this area deeper. So with that, some of the questions Conrad sent me earlier were useful for me to frame this presentation. So these are some of the questions that that we had discussed. What is the relationship of the immune system with the mind and psyche? What is the mechanism by which the mind affects the immune system? And how do positive repetitive behaviors affect the immune system, like rituals and things that you do on a daily basis? And then at the end, I will, in my very simplistic way, present to you some things that I think might be useful for us to consider for ensuring that we have a healthy life and a healthy immune system. No rocket science, but I think it's all common sense from there. So let's start with the immune system. In these days, in the COVID pandemic, everybody seems to know a lot about immunology, and they've heard words such as B cells, T cells, antibodies, protection, vaccine, neutralizing antibodies. So all of these terms have now become very, very common in newspapers, and people hear about these words quite a bit. Let me explain to you how all of these words fit in the context of how we understand immunology. I will start with the deeper immunology and then simplify it with an analogy in a little bit. So when an antigen or a virus enters our body, it first interacts with a cell in our body, which is called the antigen presenting cell, which, for example, the name of that cell could be a macrophage. This macrophage takes up the virus and presents this antigen to what are called CD4 positive cells, regulatory cells, CD8 cells, and B cells. So this is the immunology portion of it, and I will explain to you how this interaction works and what happens in our body when a virus enters. So in order to understand that concept of what happens when a virus enters our body, let's switch gears and move to looking at an analogy of immunology with society. So when we are born and when we go to elementary school, why do we go to school? We go to school to learn diverse subjects. We learn how to make friends. We also relieve our parents from their burden of, every day taking care of us. We learn to play social skills, communication, how to treat others. We learn bad habits sometimes. We learn skills for survival. We learn decision-making. But most importantly, we learn what society considers right and wrong. So we learn right from wrong. So let's take the analogy of the society a little bit further. So let's say we are all living in one little village. All of us live in one little village, and that village has one school, and we're all born in the same village. We all go to that one school to learn all the things that we know. We graduate from that school and we come out into the society, and we live harmoniously. Everybody has a specific job. Somebody is a plumber, somebody is an artist, somebody is an engineer, somebody is a doctor, etc. And we all live in a beautiful society very, very peacefully. There are another bunch of students or children in this with us as we are growing up, who also go to the same school. And they also learn what is right and wrong. However, their aptitude and attitude is not to come into society and be citizens like us, but they are responsible for ensuring law and order. So they are the police of the society. And so their job is not to build society. Their job is to ensure law and order is preserved. So that's their primary job. So now everybody is living quite harmoniously and happily in this city. One day, a foreigner comes into the city, and societal questions like we always ask. Should an immigrant be allowed into a city that we live in? And for the most part, these the person outside the city will come into the city. The person has got a different background, maybe looking different, but will come into the city because there are no physical barriers to prevent that person from coming into the city. And this person will come into the city and then travel and be part of the city, maybe become part of the city's organization. And as long as this foreigner doesn't do anything wrong, this person is tolerated and can be actually maybe part of the city, and actually may contribute positively to the city's growth, right? However, in this story that we are looking at, this foreigner that has come does not have good intentions, did not have good intentions. We don't know that, but this foreigner did not have good intentions. So now let's zoom into what's happening at the site of where this foreigner has entered the city. So when the person enters the city, this person, because they didn't have good intentions to begin with, comes with a lot of noise, shor sharaba, and he comes with a lot of people with bad intentions into the city. They also know in order to take over the city, they need to go to City Hall. They need to go to the municipal corporation right in the center of the city, because once you take over the government of the city, then you can basically take over the city. That's the process of how to take over a city. So they go to the City Hall, and the City Hall has a very smart secretary. The secretary asks for the business card. Show me your business card. So the person shows the business card, and the business card has a lot of information. The business card has the name, where they are from, maybe what their interactions are. So there's a lot of information in this business card that the foreigner has to give to the secretary. The secretary now gives that business card to many departments in the municipality. They give it to their police department, they give it to their manager, and they give it to other departments to see to do a background check a little bit. So it's the business card that is given. Now, once the business card is given to different departments and the background check is going on, while that background check is going on, because the person who came in had bad intentions to begin with, they don't wait to find out, to do the background check. They have now started entering the city, taking over the city, and now causing havoc. Now they're really causing a lot of damage and everything is happening. Meanwhile, what has happened is the background check confirms that this group of people who has come are really have bad intentions. They are terrorists and they're going to destroy the city, etc., etc. So the mayor of the city says, this is out of my hand. Now let me call the army. And so the army sends the general. The general of the army is, the general generally is a very senior person in the army and really doesn't do the fighting. The general really is the administrator and ensures that all the different parts of the army coordinate very well and fight with the army very well. So the general orders the Air Force to come in, general orders the army to come in, the Air Force comes in, so all the planes come, and the army comes and does hand-to-hand fighting, and then they finally destroy the terrorists and then clean the society, and you're back to a nice, harmonious place after having got rid of the terrorist. Now how is that related to the immune system? So it is exactly the same, because I showed you this picture of the virus entering the cell, coming into the antigen presenting cells, the CD4 cells, B cells, T cells, is exactly the same. The antigen is the terrorist. The antigen presenting cell is the administrator. And this is a cell that is able to present the antigens of the virus. To the CD4 cell is the general of the army, which actually does all the detection. T regulatory cells are the police. B cells or the antibodies are like the Air Force, because antibodies are secreted and they go throughout the body and clean up the virus. And the T cells, which are the killer cells, are like the army, because they need hand-to-hand combat to kill virally infected cells. So that, in short, is the summary of the immune response and how we manifest, and how we protect ourselves from a foreign invading organism. And this is just a scanning electron microscope picture of a T cell killing a virally infected cell, or an antibody molecule, which is shown here in this structure called Y, which floats in the serum and goes around in the body, clearing the virus. I'm going to show you a small video of how a T cell kills HIV infected cells. And I hope you can hear the video, otherwise I will have to reshare. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just reshare just to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. 1 second, because I have to click share. I have to say share sound. And then I'll share again. Yeah, okay. You can see the slide, and now I'm going to play this video. What this video is going to show is show us how a T cell kills an HIV infected cell, and the lecture that you're going to hear is being given by Bruce Walker. So I'm going to play this video. It's worth seeing it.
Well, let me show you this now in a video that Mike Oldstone at Scripps Institute in San Diego put together. Let's run this. This is a cytotoxic T cell that you see on the top, and on the bottom is an infected cell. What you see is a cytoplasmic bridge that occurs between the cytotoxic T cell and the infected cell. Serine esterases, these are things like granzymes, are released then and enter into the infected cell. At this point, what you'll notice is that that infected cell is going to start to contract a little bit as these enzymes start to punch holes in the surface membrane of this infected cell. At this point, as those punctures are made, you'll see the cytoplasmic contents balloon out from this cell, the infected cell, as the cell is dying. That cytotoxic T cell then can go on and find another cell and take care of it. Now, in all of your bodies right now, this stuff is going on. You have cytotoxic T cells that are helping to clear pathogens that you've been exposed to, and this is a normal part of the immune response.
Yeah. So I hope you were able to see the video and understand how the cytotoxic T cell here shown in the pink here is able to kill a virally infected cell with very precise, specific mechanisms. And it doesn't induce the killing by causing this inflammation. It kills it by involuting the virally infected cell completely. So it's a very controlled mechanism, right? Now, what happens in HIV, just one example, is the HIV kills the CD4 cell, which is like the general of the army, right? So when HIV kills the CD4 cell, your entire immune system comes apart. So this is just an example, extreme example of how a virus can attack the immune system. So the summary of my first part of this talk is the immune system. And the immune system, as I mentioned to you, contains many components. It contains the innate immune response, which, we have the skin, the mucus, the macrophages in our outer body, which protect us from all these infections. Then we have this, what is called the adaptive immune response, where we activate CD4 and CD8 cells. Then we have these cytokines, which are involved in, amplification of the immune response, and the adaptive immune response, where antibodies are secreted to clear the virus. So the summary of this immune system, it is highly regulated and very, very precise. So let's hold this thought, and we'll come back to the immune system with faith a little bit later. So now let's move and change gears a little bit and talk about the neuroimmune system. So the neuroimmune system is the interaction of the brain and what the physical parameters or the biochemical parameters of how the brain controls or regulates the immune system. So the brain, we know, is an immune privileged site. And what does that mean? The brain lacks a lot of lymphoid system. It's packed with neurons and glial cells and other cell types of the brain, but not so much blood vessels. There are a few blood vessels which takes oxygen to the brain, but it's not rich in blood. It's not supposed to have a strong immune system. The cells of the immune system, when they only go to the brain when something wrong happens, when the brain is infected or inflamed or something like that. If something wrong happens, that's the only time the immune system starts going into the brain. Neurons that are activated with either physical trauma or inflammation, that's when what is called the blood-brain barrier is compromised and it enters the brain. I just wanted to point out this picture of the brain that you see is made by a student of mine in University of Pennsylvania. Her name is Jade Feng, and she made this beautiful art using blade and paper. So all the black that you see is actually very carefully cut out blade marks. So as Rudyard Kipling has said, the brain, he said it in different contexts, but the brain and the blood shall never meet in a normal immune system. But in many disease conditions or even regulatory aspects of immune systems, the brain has a lot of influence on how we respond to various pathogens and disease conditions, right? Whether it is the autonomous nervous system, the endocrine system, the circadian system, which is our daily life cycle that we have, the hormones, the spleen. There are direct and indirect interactions that constantly are occurring. And there are many different cell types in the brain, like the neurons, the microglia, the astrocytes, which are highly complex cells which interact with each other and communicate very effectively as in that space between the neuron and the immune system. So what happens when something goes wrong in the brain and with relative to the immune system? So on the right side, I've shown a picture of a brain, and then the feedback mechanisms of what happens when the immune system either negatively or positively influences the brain. And so many dysfunctions of the brain, for example, viral-induced dementia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, Huntington's, schizophrenia, ALS, autism, even though they don't seem to have a direct immunological component, I mean, what I mean by that is there is no specific immune response that is compromised. There is a huge role of the immune system in all of these diseases. And a healthy immune system is very critical in either preventing or ameliorating some of these diseases. Obviously, not much is known about all of these in the science, and there's a lot of work that can be done in this area. Autoimmune diseases, on the other hand, of course, is a compromise of the immune system that can cause brain-related diseases like multiple sclerosis or myasthenia gravis. Cancer, of course, is a huge interaction between the immune system and the tumor cells, and also the brain plays a huge role in regulating how cancer can be influenced. And so therefore, patients with cancer, if we consider patients with cancer coming to for spiritual guidance and and following the path of spirituality, how does that interaction influence the immune system, which in turn can influence the cancer positively? So that the summary of the neuroimmune system is that the brain is an immune privileged site. Inflammation in the body can affect the brain. Many external factors can induce inflammation. These are complex, multifactorial interactions between the brain and the immune system, and several disease conditions can influence these interactions. So what I thought was that the interaction of the brain and the immune system, there's a delicate balance. You can't be too strong or too weak, and that balance is what is really critical in ensuring that. So now let's move to the third section, but as I mentioned in the beginning, if you think about the inverted triangle, the first two subjects I know more. Now these next two subjects I know less about. I've started reading them only recently, so I look forward to more discussion on these two topics. So the neuropsychology, one of the things that I found very interesting after talking to a lot of people is a healthy brain is manifests in many different positive ways, and in the various scriptures you can find many different aspects of health, of good health, and distractions of the mind can contribute to ill health. And there are these 9 distractions that I have listed from the shlok that comes. And I'm not going to read all of these, but I think just to give you an idea that it is the healthy mind that ultimately can lead to a healthy body. The interaction with the mind and body is so critical. And I feel like the awareness of the ability to keep the mind healthy and its relationship with health is the first step in that battle. And how do these effects on the mind actually physically influence how the immune system might work? And we all know from many, many years of experience, of a lot of research done in this area, that the psychological manifestations of behavior, like mania, anxiety, happiness, curiosity, anger, etc., may actually be controlled by secretion of specific hormones that may be up and down during the course of a person's experience. And therapeutic interventions for some of these psychological, I would say, disorders are directed towards interfering with the interactions of these hormones. However, that actually may be very, very simplistic in terms of even treatment paradigms. I think the interaction of the mind-body along with the spirituality and the thing that is beyond what we actually understand is probably required for a holistic approach to treatment. Again, just a few more slides to show the complexity on the left side of the immune system. There's so many components of the immune system. Our lymphoid structure is a very complex tree and enables all extremities of our immune system to interact. And on the right is the adrenal system or the endocrine system, where the endocrine system and the immune system come together and have these interactions. So the summary of the psychoneuroimmune system is that the endocrine and the immune system interact quite a bit. Various hormones play a role, and the hormones can either positively or negatively affect the immune system. And my summary from that is multiple layers of interactions between the immune system, neural networks, and hormonal endocrine networks are very, very tightly regulated to be able to ultimately manifest the external phenotype that we see in individuals. Which brings me to the fourth stage of our discussion on the role of the faith and the immune response. And here, I'm going to just pose some comments and questions. I don't have answers, and I think I look forward to the discussion for some of the paths of how we can try to navigate through this space. There are many stories that we all have heard of patients who have been very, very sick and recover from life-threatening diseases. My friend here in Philadelphia, her name is Kalpana Patankar. She tells me the story, and I've experienced it myself, of her husband who really was a real, in her mind, a case of someone who took on faith, and he followed Buddhism at some point along with her, lived for an additional 10 years because he went into this faith-based process for himself in trying to rediscover himself. And this is a story that many of us can relate to, and dependence on faith can really improve health. Our body is so well equipped in curing itself that we need to have faith in our own body. And the questions to ask are, what happens if you don't have faith? And when we have all these symptoms, who is observing the disease condition? So are we as human beings equipped to observe ourselves in a very precise and accurate manner to be able to understand what's going on in our body? And to that effect, Einstein has said, you cannot use your own mind to solve your own problems. You probably need mentors, you need other people to help you understand. So a community-based process is probably very critical in this kind of an environment. So in evaluating what faith might mean in terms of immunology or health, I think faith is something that is much bigger than what we understand our bodies to be. Like, for example, when we are angry, our entire body gets tense, right? It is not just our headache. The entire body feels that anger. When we are afraid, our entire body shrinks and contracts. It's not just like some portion of our body interacts. When we feel happy, we feel completely happy. It's like every cell of our body feels happy, right? So the positive effect is overwhelming, and the negative effects also are all whole body experiences. And these whole body experiences cannot necessarily be explained just by some biochemical or chemical reactions within us. And our emotions induce what we feel, which is something way bigger than our body and maybe much bigger than something that is not tangible to us today. And so healthy lifestyle involves so many different aspects that we always hear about. I'm going to leave you at the end with this paper that has just been published in Cell, and I've given the reference here in this article. It's a beautiful article which is called The Hallmarks of Health. Over the last maybe 100 years, 200 years, medicine as a field has always evolved to address disease. We create medicines and we treat patients and we do things to have disease, right? However, it is not the disease we have to treat. We have to treat health. And I think one ironical statement is that we call hospitals as healthcare centers. In fact, they are not the healthcare centers. They are disease care centers. And it is places like your congregation, yoga centers, maybe meditation halls. Those are the healthcare centers which bring positivity. So I'm going to end by showing, because I'm no expert in this area, But since Conrad asked me to end by giving some examples of what we could do to improve our immune health, and I put them in some things that you can do that are in your control and maybe not in your control, like nutrition, exercise, empathy, kindness, being calm, meditation, and a little bit of planning of what your life is going to be like. And things that are not in your control but can influence your health are your environment, your genetics, and maybe the behaviors of people around you. So I'm going to stop here, and thank you again so much for this wonderful opportunity to have this amazing topic to discuss. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dr. Chirmule. Now we will ask you some questions.
Yes, please.
So I will take the questions and I will tell you the questions from here because the voice does not carry.
Yeah.
Anyone? Yes, Richard. So you pointed out that chemistry affects emotions. So is there sort of a mind map which says that when you have this emotion, this chemical or this enzyme goes up? There was something in that, those test tubes which you pointed out. In fact, I had a question on that. But is there something that is there?
Yes, that's a good question. And I think that is part of the neuroscience work that has been done for the last, let's say, 50 years or so, to understand what kind of hormones induce what kind of emotion. So if you have depression, for example, there are certain hormones in our body that are manifested at higher levels. And these are done by studies, systematic studies where they take samples from patients who have gone under depression, and then seeing what kind of hormones go up and down, and based on that they've sort of tabulated what I showed you in those test tubes. Yes, and the reason for that is then you can have drug interventions where you treat that particular hormone so that when that hormone goes down, that emotional manifestation like depression can go down. This is a very soft science so far. I mean, there is a lot of research that is done, but like I said, I'm not an expert in this, but this is an area of neuroscience research.
So drawing from his question, okay, Gilbert, you have a question? You have to unmute Gilbert. Okay, Gilbert, then I will.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, you can be heard.
From your talk, yeah. Doctor, from your talk, I could understand that the hormones lead to good health. They play a positive role. Maybe love hormone or friendship hormone that will lead to good health. Whereas how you are able to compare faith creating a positive attitude and the good health in a person?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So, the reason I brought up the endocrine process and the related emotional work, emotional influences, is I think, and there may be research done on this, and I just don't know it, but then just like people have done experiments on people who are depressed or maybe have suicidal tendencies or whatever the Alzheimer's, and they've looked at the biochemical measures of these different hormones. There are at least 30 or 40 different hormones that are involved, and seeing the levels of hormones that are up and down in these disease conditions. Maybe if you can take a group of people who are who follow faith-based rituals and live a life of let's say calmness, for lack of a better word, and somebody else who's not so spiritually inclined and maybe, I don't know, goes to bars or something like that, just as an extreme example, and see whether there will be a difference in endocrine or immune functions. I can almost say from a quite, and I think this is common sense, with fair degree of certainty that there will be a difference. We can do this experiment through a proper methodological process, but I think it's an experiment that might be worth testing out. Gilbert, I want to answer that question in one more way. I was just thinking about it, and it's sort of very relevant to the COVID world today, right? So when I look at a person, and I see their muscles, or I see their white hair, or whatever, I can tell approximately that we are so and so age, or you're so strong, and you're so you're fit, etc., etc., etc. But immune system, I can't tell. I can be a very strong person, but I might have a weak immune system. Or I might be like a, stick, and I might have a very strong immune system. So the immune system you can't evaluate by just seeing, isn't it? Similarly, your faith, you can't tell by just seeing a person. You probably have to look at the behavior of a person to determine faith. And then, so if you do an experiment where you look at faith and the relationships of the immune system, I think there will be a positive correlation. And I can elaborate a little bit more later, but let me pause here for your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. It was a really good question. Yeah.
Dr. Chirmule, what you're actually saying is that if there is somebody who is happy, and if I take a study of his endocrine systems and I find certain hormones which are up, I can create a medicine that will, I can give to everybody, and everybody will be happy. You're laughing at that.
No, I'm laughing because we know some of those drugs.
You all know some of those drugs. Okay, hallucinogens, okay. Hallucinogens, okay.
No, I think those are, making drugs is not simple. They always have side effects. So the best thing is not to take drugs, just to do good, be a good human being. That's right. The best drug you take.
Yeah, so the reason why I asked you that is because, say you've got a person of faith, because you did a comparative study and you're saying comparisons can be done, we correlate. You have a person who's really happy because he has got a faith belief. You have another person who's also really happy and who does not have a faith belief. In that case, would you be able to see differences, or would you be able to see the same thing? And would they be then the same? That is one part of, say, doing a study. The second part of the study is this person really believes that he has got a faith belief, and so therefore there are certain levels which are high. Will everybody who has got the similar types of levels have faith, be a person of faith? I mean, rather philosophical, but
no. I think you're absolutely right, and this is where the conundrum of designing a correct study to do this kind of work is very critical, right? I mean, that's where you take a faith-based person, and you have three parameters, right? You can have many, but you have three. For example, in this, you have faith, you have immune system. So that's the relationship between faith and immune system, and happy, let's say, right? So a person can have faith and be happy, and question mark, what is the immune system? A person can have faith and a good immune response, what is happiness? And person can be happy and have a good immune system, what is faith? So it's a triangulation of these three things, right? So designing an experiment which addresses these three things in a systematic way is something that we can do. And faith doesn't have to be necessarily, in my mind, a sort of again, for lack of a better word, religious path, right? It could be like in Hinduism, we call karmane vadhikarasti, which is the path of doing good work all the time. Karma, right? Doing good work, karma. Yeah, so even that can be faith in my mind. And I'm not a proponent of one or the other pathways, but I think it's very, very simple to let me show you. Let me answer. Okay, maybe I'll wait for another question, and I want to give one more example of how faith, and not necessarily faith, how faith in our own self can really cure majority of the diseases, right? So let me take a shot at that, and then let's see what the discussion comes out. When we get sick, let's say we get a viral infection, we get flu, okay? What will happen if we don't treat the flu? To a normal healthy individual, if the person gets a flu, what will happen if we don't take treatment? Okay, the path, just like I showed you in the terrorist analogy, if the flu virus is a terrorist, and if you have a healthy immune system, the flu virus will come into your body. It will cause some sickness. It will give you fever. It will give you all kinds of, you'll feel weak, etc., etc. But over the course of time, your immune system will be able to clear the flu. In a majority of the subjects, maybe 99% of the subjects who get infected with flu, without any treatment, they will be cured. Because our body does that. That's why we've evolved for 3 million years doing this, right? So we take treatment, when we get the flu, we take Tylenol, or we take some medicine, or we take ibuprofen or something. Why do we take that? Because we cannot tolerate the fever. Oh, we don't want fever. But fever is not such a bad thing. Fever actually is a good thing, because the immune system increases the temperature of the body so that these cells can act properly. By treating the fever, sometimes what happens is you are, affecting, you're tying the immune system's hands and saying, okay, I'm going to tie your hands, and still you have to kill the virus, right? So sometimes, I'm speaking more philosophically. In real life, obviously, we don't leave people who are sick to be not treated with anything. But I'm just philosophically saying that our healthy body is capable of responding to every major virus that we have. Now, there are some very deadly viruses, COVID, for example, tuberculosis, malaria, other viruses, which can overcome, which can really defeat the immune system. But again, it is only a small % of the people who don't have strong immune systems where the immune response will fail. Continuing with the flu analogy, I told you that almost 99% of the healthy individuals will not die of the flu, for example. But as you go old, as the flu starts infecting older and older people, the percentage of people who might die of a flu infection increases. Let's say, for example, after like 80 years of age, if you get the flu, there's a higher 10% likelihood that it might be fatal. Now, since we know that it is going to be 10% higher probability of fatality, then we intervene. Then with drugs, we intervene to say, okay, now we know that from various studies in viroimmunology, that when you reduce the viral burden by killing the virus through chemical means, then you allow the immune system to clear the virus a little bit better. And that's why we take drugs. So what I was trying to explain to you in this last 5 minutes or so is that our immune system is completely capable of responding to everything without treatment. I know it's a provocative statement, but it is what it is.
Father Jossi first, and then Son Richard. Yes.
I've heard people say those who live slums or some different situations without any comforts, or they are able to build a strong immune system, as they can eat any food, they can drink any type of water, or they are barefoot and work hard manual labor, and they seem to withstand any type of cold or weather, isn't it because the body gets adjusted, or is it a mental state or outlook, or how are they able to exit through, and how they are able to...
The question, Dr. Chirmule, is that there are people who live in slums or in areas where there is a poor ill health. So they can eat anything, they drink anything, yet they are resistant. The capacity is very high, and they don't get sick as easily as others. Now, your question is it the mind or is it the body, right, Father Jasi? The question is it the mind or the body at work over here?
Yeah. Very good and difficult question to answer, but I will answer it in first with the body part. So, I think, for example, there is, let's take a slum, and let's take an organism which causes really bad morbidity. Let's say it's a bacteria called Helicobacter. We don't have to worry about what the name is. It is a bacteria which can cause very severe intestinal disease. In fact, people who get Helicobacter, many of them progress to get colon cancer, and it's a very bad bacteria. Now, if it turns out that the Helicobacter infection is prevalent in a particular slum, right? No matter how healthy that immune system of that slum dweller may be, because they're exposed to all kinds of other infections, when they get infected with Helicobacter, they will get the same kind of bad effects of Helicobacter as anybody else. That is one extreme example of a very bad Helicobacter. So there's no difference between a person who's exposed to all kinds of different pathogens versus Helicobacter in that situation. Now let's take another bacterial infection, which is, let's say, E. coli. E. coli is another bacteria which can cause severe morbidity, but it is a milder, quote unquote, milder bacteria. It doesn't cause this huge amount of bad things, right? Now, in the slum, for example, when the people in the slum are exposed to all kinds of, I would say not unhealthy, but their environment allows them to be exposed to all kinds of pathogens very earlier on in their life. The kids are playing in the mud, and they're playing, in all the environment over there. They are experiencing E. coli from childhood. So it's almost like they're getting vaccinated with that E. coli. And when they get vaccinated, quote unquote, vaccinated, they are developing an immune response to protect them against E. coli. And therefore, when they actually get infected with E. coli containing food or bacteria, they don't get the infection. Versus a child or person who's living in a very clean environment, quote unquote, has never been exposed to E. coli kind of bacteria earlier on in their life, and suddenly comes in contact with E. coli later on in their life, the manifestation of that E. coli later on will be much higher. So that is the answer to your question from a body perspective. Now, from a mind perspective, I think that there is a role. I don't know the answer to this question. However, I think there is a mind component to this. I cannot answer this question, but I will try to answer it in a slightly different way. When I was younger, and I know this distinctly because I actually used to do this, when I felt like I was going to get sick, and I didn't do it with any awareness or anything, this is something that worked for me, that's why I did it. When I felt like I was going to get sick, I used to go and do some very extreme physical exercise. I used to go for a run, or I used to play badminton, or I used to do something really physical when I was just about to get sick. Not actually got sick, but when I felt like I'm going to get sick, I used to do that. And then when I came back, suddenly I felt better. I did not go into that level of sickness. And I did that consistently. So the mind part of it may be, there are many factors in our body that allow us to activate many parts of our body which we don't know, and therefore when we do that, when we activate many parts of our body, all like I was telling you, the neuroimmunological system, the psychoimmunological system, the endocrinal immunological system, and hundreds of interactions that we have, which allow us to interact with the immune system, then ultimately the immune system will be more protective. So a little bit of a hand-waving answer to your question, but yes, I think there is a little bit of definitely there's body, but also a little bit of mind. and which actually gives me, this is the paper I was telling you about, the hallmarks of health. This is the paper in Cell that I would really recommend people to read. It's a little technical, but to the extent, so this tells you how the immune system of our body interacts with every other part of our body in a positive or a negative way. So it's a very important paper, I feel, to understand the role of our whole body to maintain health.
You'll be sending us the link of this paper, right? You send it to my WhatsApp. I'll send it to everybody.
The link is in the slides.
Oh, the link is in the slides. I'll send everyone the slides. Yeah. Okay, there is another question, Richard. Yeah. Sorry, Bala. Sorry, Bala.
But now we see that there is a lot of science that is proving that there is a correlation, positive results that are happening when the immune system is developed. But it is nothing but the physical element is secure. So, are there positive studies or elaborate studies on correlation that happens?
Correlation and lack of correlation.
Yes, lack of correlation. Even so, there is scientific proofs are given. Actually, this is a huge step forward.
Yeah, Dr. Chirmule, we've got you in a conundrum again. Yeah, so now we all believe in miracles, and all faith traditions have got miracles. Now, having spoken to us about the psychoneuroimmunology and all these systems which are within the body which are working, if the body is able to heal itself and all these things come into play, where does this leave miracles? That's one part of the question. Okay. Then there is another part of the question. Are there any proofs that such a thing has happened? You know, where a person has, let's say, done the relaxation response and then something has disappeared, and this has been proven through studies, and you have this. And are there things which have not been proved? So therefore, then we can say that if it is proved, then there is no God. If it is not proved, then maybe there is something like a God or a higher power or a transcendent being. Right?
Yeah, no, I think first of all, very good question, and definitely I love to be in these conundrums. It allows you to explore the unknown space a little bit more, and the more you know, the more you know how much you don't know, isn't it? So to answer the question about miracles, I think we all have examples of miracles in our own families and friends. People who have been extremely sick, you never thought that they would come out of it, and they come out of it, right? And there's no real explanation about a medical explanation about how that happened. And that the example I told you was my friend Kalpana's husband, who really he was very, 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 very sick, and there was no way he could have survived if there was no miracle of some sorts that was happening, and the miracle of sorts allowed him to live another 10 years in his life, and very successful 10 years. Not just here on 10 years on some inhaler or something, like on like not on life support. Now the thing that happened with him was, he took on spirituality at that time. He was not a spiritual person, according to Kalpana Tai, and he was something who was sort of downplayed this whole religious spiritual path, and he was very practical, and he wanted hard science and facts and things like that, and he was this softer halo of all the things that we talk about very without the scientific discussion. He was not a very big fan of that, but he sort of surrendered himself to the Buddhism faith and the teachings of that, and he started going to these Buddhist monasteries, and he started following the ritualistic work that they did on a daily basis, including those bells and he had these bells that he used to ring all the time in the temples. And whether that had a role to play in his getting better, there was no specific study that is done. But Kalpana Tai herself, being a doctor, unequivocally says that it is absolutely required. So to answer that, that is one answer to that question. The second answer to that question is again back to Kalpana Tai. Kalpana Tai and me have talked about a lot of this. I've talked to many different people now, especially she introduced me to this Chinese medicine folks. And I should have had a slide on this, but she actually did send me something. So we are a physical body in which we have our, 7 chakras, or the 7 portions of our body, from our head to our mid-ribs to our pelvis to feet and the earth, right? And so what we receive from the earth, from the heavens, or from the top space, we absorb through the top portion of our body. Then that sort of energy, whatever you might call it, is transmitted through the middle part of our body. And then ultimately we are stabilized from the leg portion of our body, where we are grounded to the earth, and every sort of like an electrical current, we are grounded to the ground, right? And that's why we are standing. And this is the philosophy of what she has told me about Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine doesn't treat the symptom obviously like the treatment. So there was an example of a treatment that was, and I'm coming to the answer about miracles. So recently what happened was, there's another example of Chinese medicine. The lady was, her left shoulder was hurting. And Kalpana Tai usually does acupuncture, and when in the acupuncture process, you don't treat that particular symptoms, but that you treat sort of the energy level, right, that is in your body. So to treat the right shoulder, the pins have to be put at on the left leg, right? So she put the pins on the left leg for this woman, and this woman, sort of a skeptic of the Chinese medicine process, said, hey, how come you're putting needles on the left leg? My right shoulder is hurting. Why are you doing that, right? So, she made Kalpana Tai put something on the left shoulder because her left shoulder was hurting, because that's what she felt. And then when she put needles on her left shoulder, her left leg started twitching. And Kalpana Tai said, are you moving your left leg? She said, no, I'm not moving my left leg. But then why is it moving? That's when the lady got convinced that all of these things are connected in a way that we don't know, that we don't completely understand, right? And so having a faith that treating the left leg will cure your right shoulder is something that is very hard for some people to accept. But once you sort of surrender to that, Kalpana Tai will tell you hundreds of stories of miraculous cures which you cannot imagine that Chinese medicine has manifested. Long answer again.
Any questions? Yes, Edward.
Sacrifices, whatever it is. How does it places like
Dr. Chirmule, the question is again on miracles. So when people offer, let's say, ritualistic sacrifice or offerings, it's not sometimes just an individual who gets better, but sometimes it's also a group of people, let's say a village, which believes that something is happening. So the whole thing, there's a lot of change which happens in the village, right? Is that your question? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important discussion to have. And I feel, as an individual, even from a treatment perspective, when you treat a disease, you're not only treating the patient of cancer who may be getting better because of the treatment, but that treatment affects the whole family, right? How the family feels, and so any physical treatment also can affect positively the entire community that is around that. So that's one example of a individual's health being affecting everybody else's health around them, so which we can understand, right? If my father was sick and I treated my father well and he got better, the whole family got better in a way, right? They're not getting depressed, or they're not getting sad or something like that, right? So that is one physical example. I think from a practical way, I don't know whether, if I had cancer and my neighbor had cancer, or, my person in the bed next to me had cancer, and if that treatment was given to me and I felt better, will that other cancer patient feel better just because I feel better? The physical manifestations of that treatment, of my treatment, are not going to help that person's cancer. But the fact that I feel better and I feel happy, my happiness will surely have a positive influence on the person who may be on the bed next to me. Again, hand waving, and these are questions that I don't know answers to. Let me answer one. Let me put one more question, more of a question than an answer. I asked this question of my astrophysicist friend who studies energies in the universe. So he studies the black hole, and he's in University of Pennsylvania, and he studies the energies that are required to bend light. And what is the energy that is the dark matter that we call, what nobody knows today, according to him, what the composition of this dark matter is. But they all know that it is some kind of an energy which is not harnessed yet, and we don't have instruments to measure that energy yet. And that dark matter is what allows or induces the light to bend in a way which creates the black hole, right? Now, this dark matter sort of energy that we have is probably omnipresent all around the world, and is probably all around us also. And therefore, we might be exuding energies that might be interacting with us, we don't know. But when I asked him this question, is there any measurable energy that comes out from our human bodies that you can actually measure using physical instruments? And he said, no. Take that with a grain of salt and see what that means. But to answer your question, can sacrifices, offerings, positive deeds done in a community for one person or a group of individuals help a larger community and a village? And the short answer is yes. And I think you all are great examples of doing just that in this room, isn't it?
Thank you. Aruk, did you have a question, or somebody had a question? Diane, sorry.
I want to ask a question about COVID. There will be studies on COVID and faith perspective. Process. So I can go back to my own experience of having COVID. I can see there was a bit of COVID, and that was the first wave. How we were such a year, and within 2 days, my perspective changed, and healing became faster. So I think there's whether they have done any studies on this.
Father Marana, you have. I'll know after I finish this. Then who else was there? No, wait, Father. I just want to know so that I know how many. You also had Rex. You had a question. No, only Father Marana. Okay, I'll just take it. So the question is on COVID, since you've also done some studies on COVID. So one of the priests over here has had COVID, and he has recovered quite well, but he says that he recovered faster because of his faith, and because of the faith, the perspective changed. And so therefore he had this much faster recovery than he would have expected, or probably seen in others who did not have faith. So are there any studies which you, since now you are actually working on COVID, and all the various parameters? I have a question which is in my mind, which I'm going to ask when everybody finishes, again, which has relationship to COVID and something which has come out of it incidentally from the World Health Organization. So do you have any studies, or do you have anything done on this?
Short answer, no. I haven't followed this work, and this is something that I will start looking at, since Conrad, you have sort of exposed me to a whole new world where I was not following, but I will start looking at this. Short answer is no. A little bit longer answer is my gut feeling would say yes, there would definitely be a positive influence. If there's anything, there will be a positive influence in the clearing of the virus. If you are more, I will use the word faith, but in a broad term, by meaning that faith is you are generally more healthy.
Thank you. Father Mariana. You're talking about a person who's born in faith or a person?
So how can now observe man-made, whether it is by oneself or to next or by group? How
Okay, I'm trying to understand, just see if I'm getting it right when I ask the question. So a lot of what happens in the body where the immune response is concerned is because of something going into the body, whether we are in the healthy state or in an unhealthy state. But faith is something which does not come in because of something going into the body. It is there, whatever be the religious tradition. So would the two be the same in their interaction?
Oh,
Yeah.
very good question. Yeah, so if that is a question, let me think about this answer before I answer it. If I can understand the question, you're saying that something that comes from outside into the body, like a virus.
Yeah, that is what develops an immune response, and we are constantly our immunity is because of involvement with various things. So that's why the immune system is alive. Whereas faith does not have that element at all, but it is there. Yeah, it's not non-induced. It's not induced.
Yeah. So let me ask this question. Maybe reverse. Let me first answer this question. You're absolutely correct. So we are constantly exposed to different pathogens and different things, allergens and pathogens and things like that outside the body, which activate our immune system. Our immune system starts responding to them, so that the next time they see these things, we get more resistant to those kind of external factors. Intrinsically, faith may be present intrinsically, but this may be a question back to you a little bit. Faith also grows over time in our body, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so
Diane talked about it.
Yeah, just like we all grow physically, I think the concepts of faith also ultimately grow in our body. And in my mind, and that's why I presented the psychoneuroimmunological system, is as you do more and more ritualistic things physically, like prayer or coming to congregations like this, having these sort of intellectual discussions and all of that, you are increasing your belief in faith or belief in a particular thing. And those beliefs, when you physically look at them, probably the network in your brain is getting more interconnected, much like what the immune system is when it gets exposed to other organisms. When faith improves, your network of your brain increases, and by your network of your brain being increases, that might have, because it is induced by hormones and endocrine systems, those endocrine systems might have a positive influence on your immune system.
Father Joyce, yeah. Right.
Of this
Right. That's
For example, lung cancer, say, one person thinks that, you know, I will, and he will recover. Nevertheless,
that's what Diane just now said with hope and fear. They were just to give you an idea about what intervention discussion happened over here. It's on how you affirm the faith. And there were the 2 points raised. What you could have fear and you could have hope. Like for instance, the person who's got COVID, the person with fear seeing everybody dying might die, or the person with hope, holding on to hope, changing his perspective, feels that there is something which could be done, and therefore the person recovers. Which brings me actually to my point, which has come out from the World Health Organization literature. And this is something which has been written about. And they talk about psychological immunogenesis. I don't know whether you heard this term, psychological immunogenesis. And a lot of your last and your second last slide talks about psychological immunogenesis, of which it was seen exactly what you, Joy, and what Diane was talking about. Persons who retained these elements of hope, faith, all the things which work within faith traditions, those were persons who recovered faster. And so therefore they found on analysis, maybe not having done empirically research studies, that this was something that worked. So therefore hold on to those things. And this is written in research papers because I've talked about this. So therefore the term psychoimmunogenesis is something very interesting, of which, since secular science does not talk about faith, of which in that one of the elements was faith in the psychological immunogenesis for the generation of an immunity which helps the person get better.
Yeah. No, I don't doubt the fact that faith will have a positive influence on health overall for the various reasons we talked about today. And I won't be surprised that there may be some studies already, and especially with COVID, it might instigate further studies which might be useful. And this is, like I mentioned in the beginning, Conrad, I think it might be worth for us to collaborate and maybe explore and write a paper on this topic based on our findings.
Eddie, Richard.
what do you say?
Faith will make you whole and strengthen your immunity. Did you say that your faith will make you whole and strengthen your immunity? No. Did you say that when somebody comes to you who's sick and you pray over the person and then you tell the person that your faith will make you? Yeah, correct. Yes. Yes, he's already addressed that. Yeah. Okay. Right. So do not give medicine. That's what you're saying. Do not give medicine. So the question is actually, you can tell a person to work with his or her faith, and is medicine required or is medicine not required? Because how will you decide on that?
Yeah. I think that is an interesting question, given the advancements of medicine that we've had in the last 100 years or so. Maybe 100, 200 years ago, when there were no medicines for even simple diseases, people used to die quite early, right? And by a person living up to the age of 50 was considered, a fairly successful life. Today, 50 is nothing, right? Everybody's like alive much more longer than that. I like to follow the history of art. And I was just looking at all the famous painters, like if you think about Michelangelo, or if you look at Raphael, or look at Caravaggio, they all died in their early 50s, right? So and they lived in this 15th, 16th century when no medicines were available. So they probably died of some very simple disease that is very curable today, right? So the body has the capacity to cure itself. But at some point, as we grow older, our immune system and our entire body sort of weakens to its ability to do things because it gets exhausted. And by helping the immune system to do a little bit better by killing the virus, for example, in COVID, there is a pill that now kills the virus. And if you get rid of the virus, you give the immune system a fighting chance to kill the smaller army that might be there. Instead of 100 million army, which your immune system cannot fight with, maybe if the army is reduced to 10,000 people, then the immune system is capable of fighting. So what medicine does, I think, in addition to faith, is maybe the intrinsic component of the body to cure itself is a very important faith-based thing that needs to be done. But in order to give that faith a fighting chance, you can reduce the threshold of the disease by intervening with some of the factors that cause disease.
Emma? No, I didn't follow your questions. So just only faith, he just answered that you have to take medicines when it passes beyond the level where the body is deteriorating, if medicines are required. Okay. So you talk about beliefs which are not related to faith beliefs. Okay. So the question is beliefs which are not related to faith beliefs. A person who's got, let's say, an illness, and he believes that he will live to a long age, and he does live to a long age, whereas the person who has got faith, then at some point of time gives up, and then he dies. So therefore, the one who does not believe, a non-believer or an atheist, the possibility could be that even such a person could live longer.
Yeah, I think unless you do a systematic study of all the groups that you're studying, making anecdotal making conclusions out of anecdotal observation may not be the right thing to do. And so having a large enough population of people who are faith-based, like we said in the triangulation, right? Faith happy and healthy, or immune happy. You can have all different combinations of these. If you're very sick, will faith alone be sufficient to cure you? There may be some people who will get cured by just not doing anything. And there may be some people who will need treatment to get cured. A lot of these medicines, sometimes many of these medicines that we take, Tylenol, for example, when we have a headache, or a paracetamol that we take when we have a fever or something, right? In some people the temperature goes down, and some people it doesn't. There's some faith that we feel, okay, because we've taken the medicine, maybe the temperature will go down, and maybe the drug had nothing to do with the temperature coming down, and it wouldn't have been any different if you didn't take the medication. But we feel like because we took the medication, the temperature came down. Now, the sort of negative aspect of medication is that, or external medication, as somebody said, if you take something from outside, there is always a possibility that something bad could happen because you took something from outside. I mean, a drug as old and as simple as paracetamol kills some people, very few people, but it does kill some people. It has toxic effects in certain people. So no drug is completely safe. So whenever you take something from outside, there's always this risk-benefit ratio of something bad happening. And faith has also got this negative and positive influence, right? Because we cannot measure it, because we cannot quantitate it. I can't tell how faithful or how much faith one person has versus how much another person has, right? Just like the immune system, I can't tell physically how much faith you have. So because of that, I cannot do a quantitative study to understand how much faith there may be. And I'm going to say one more sentence, and I'll pause here for the question. I could have faith. I could go to the church every day. I could pray every day, but I may not have faith. An external person may not be able to tell that. Only I know that, right?
Maybe we'll take a last question, because you're also been up since probably 5 o'clock because you were waiting for us. We'll take a last question, and we'll take a last question. Maybe you can have your morning cup of coffee if you've not already had it.
Not yet.
You have a question.
That's a question for it. When you saw the wave,
Yeah, well, he's saying that faith has a placebo effect and that it releases a lot of energy from within, I suppose, healing energy, which then helps the person recover because the person believes strongly. And so therefore, I suppose the system, if you think about the immune system, therefore, you look at the lymphocytes and the phagocytes and all, they would get activated. And therefore, the fighting chance is far higher than someone who doesn't have it. That's a comment, actually. That's a comment. Yeah. Okay, and one last question, we'll let you go for your coffee. Yes, Dheeraj. That is not immunology. So, anyway, I'll just tell you the question, but you don't have to answer. But this is again true. He was talking about persons who are of faith, and they do a puja, or they do, and there is no rain. Now we are actually waiting for the rain to stop away because very cold and damp. Yes, so I hope nobody's done a puja. But it rains. It rains. So well, the same other part of that thing is, whether the energy feels, if I have got faith and I curse somebody, it has also that part and that element to it. So well, you don't have to answer this. It may have something, as you said, the body tense, the body relax, and has effect on the immune system. And somebody comes and tells you that, and it creates destructive processes in the body. All those elements are there, actually, if you go to see. But it's just a point of thought. If you have a comment, we'll end with that last comment.
I don't have a specific comment on that, and that's the part of faith we don't understand, right? And I think I think one of the things that science and scientists in general, and I consider myself a part of that community, is always looking for evidence-based concepts, right? If there is scientific evidence for a certain thing, then there is more belief in that, versus something that is do you believe in God? Somebody will say, show me God, then I'll believe then God. That part of the faith, you get data and you look at data, and after the data, something that tells you beyond the data, that is really difficult to explain, and that in my mind is faith. And personally, I believe in the concept of faith, that something larger than myself exists, and it helps me explain certain phenomena which are very difficult to explain with data. And so thank you again for like an incredible opportunity to engage in this conversation. And I look forward to more interactions on this topic in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Chirmule, for talking to us and accepting to give us these insights. I know you are, being the CEO of a company, you actually cleared your schedule, got up very early for us, did not have a cup of coffee. So we let you go now. God bless you. And I'll see you in Pune when you come to Pune.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Stop recording. I'll share the link here.